Graza Nation.
Welcome to the Sunday Symposium. We're still here, presented by Native Roots Radio Network. This is a Native conversation of where we've been and where we're going.
Welcome, everybody, to the Sunday Night Symposium presented by Native Roots Radio. Remember that if you like our content and you would like to see more of our content, please swing on by to our Patreon at patreon.com/Native Roots Radio Network. Miigwech.
Ahu, Ho-Trunk Raja, Wakunjahare, Hingadena. I am so pleased and happy to have everybody here tonight. We're doing a reporter's show here about what's happening, and we're going to talk to a few people that are working at frontline news, and we really are excited to have everybody on here tonight. I am Wakunjahare, Distant Thunder, and you're listening to the Sunday Night Symposium. What I'd really like to do tonight, right now, is to start off right away with, first I want Leah to introduce herself, and then I'd like to have a little conversation with Leah, with newly elected House Representative Heather Keeler. So let's start the show and get it going here.
All right. Thank you, Robert Pilot, Miigwech. I really appreciate you having me on today with all these awesome guests. So I'm going to talk to newly elected, as you mentioned, Heather Keeler. Bonjour, I'm Leah Lem, member of the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe and Community Story Share. A little bit about me that kind of relates to this, line 3. I live right on the Prairie River here in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, just a short hike from where 30 years ago, long before we moved here, there was a pipeline rupture resulting in over 1.7 million gallons of spilled oil. And I hadn't heard about it until we moved up here, and maybe it's probably my lack of research. But these spills just aren't on the top of many of our minds, on my mind, at least when I was living in the cities. But there are more and more as the undeniable ramifications of pipelines are exposed. So I want to say thank you to our guests and all of you great folks for fiercely bringing this to our attention and to the attention of all. And I have a lot to learn, I have to say, and I've been going through all the great online resources. And so I just have a few questions today. So Heather Keeler, can you tell us a bit about the basics? Where are the water protectors located in Minnesota, and what's the main objective?
Well, I think I want to start off by saying I'm still learning. I mean, that's why I went out and spent the day with Winona today. I ask a lot of questions. Right now, we spent the day up by Palisade, but there's like 5 different camp areas. There's some in Park Rapids, Bemidji, Palisade, different areas that this pipeline is going to end up covering close to 300 miles through some of our most beautiful areas in Minnesota, crossing close to 227 bodies of water, for a state that we care so much and highlight our water, like we talk about all of the lakes and the beauty, and people spend time fishing, that it's so surprising to me that the greater community doesn't want to protect our water as well. I keep saying this is so much bigger than just an Indigenous issue, but it's Indigenous people who are stepping up to be the water warriors here. And it's one thing I learned. So with Standing Rock, we talked a lot about water protectors, and today the language I was hearing over and over was water warriors. And I love that. And I think that it's something that, it's all across northern Minnesota. And so to just narrow it down to one location is really hard. There's places all over. And I think that I really encourage people to get involved. I think that when it comes to the basics and anything, that we can read about it or we can hear about it, but unless you actually go and see and feel and learn and witness the things, you just don't get the full grasp of it. Today was very emotional for me. I'm still kind of processing just the things that I saw and the things that I heard. So yeah, I'll let you continue.
Thank you for that. I can hear it in your voice. It sounds like there's some emotion that you have there. And is there anything you'd like to share as far as what you're seeing, what you're hearing and sensing where you are during the water warrior work? And what's the mood of the warriors and protectors and maybe the relationships that are forming out there?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really deep rooted. I mean, it's a piece of that historical trauma, I think, that we all continue to live through, that like we go back to land removals, or like forced removal, and we were moved onto reservations because reservations at the time were considered unusable land, and now all of a sudden they find some sort of value, and they don't respect our treaties, and they don't even understand our treaties. And so that's where the relationship piece for us today was. There was 8 legislators and elected officials, or newly elected officials as well, that traveled out there to build that relationship. Because I think that we can do a lot of grassroots organizing, and there's a lot of really powerful things going on out there. There's some kids that are actually in a tree right now, and they're like 20 years old. Y'all, like, people are putting their lives on the line and risk, being incarcerated and missing out on college and missing out on opportunities to protect each other. And that's just so, that's an act of love that you just don't see in some communities. Like, kids are in a tree, like living in a tree right now. I mean, you don't really understand that until you're there and you see it, and you see that portion couldn't be chopped down because of what those kids are doing. And so the relationships and generations is there too. So the legislative relationship, the generational relationship is there. But then also, like, you just feel the relationship with Mother Earth and the water and the beauty. And on my way out there, I saw 3 eagles, and on my way back, I saw 1. And for me, that's really powerful. I know that some people will understand that. And I mean, on my way back, I actually had to pull over, and I just like emotionally lost it, because we need this to be highlighted, and we need people to understand the bigger work that needs to take place. And I think a lot of that is our leaders who make decisions need to understand our treaty rights, but also our spirituality and our sovereignty. It was really interesting too, because I don't know if you all have like really dug in and talked to Winona lately, but they built a lodge out there. And then just one day they came back to the lodge, and there was a stake in the middle of the lodge, like that Enbridge just walked through the lodge and put a stake there. And for people who really understand the spiritual and the historical meaning behind our lodges, to think that that's such a violation, that's such like a spiritual, emotional, historical violation, to just have people walk through and put a stake in there with the idea that they're just going to plow right through there without any historical or cultural guidance. Yeah.
Wow, Heather, thank you for sharing that. That's got to be so hard to see. And, a lot of us aren't able to be on site, at least, right now. But are there ways that people can support your work who can't be on site right now, who do want to help and take action, whether it's supporting you or taking direct action? How would you recommend those of us who can't be on site right now to do so?
Leah, could I jump in for just 1 second?
Yeah, of course.
And what I'd like you to do is, maybe could you direct that to Tara Hauska? She just made it on, and then
Okay.
we'll, if you don't mind, and if Tara could answer that question.
Okay, Tara, did you hear that? I can direct that towards you.
I can sort of hear you guys. There's like a lot of feedback for some reason, so.
Okay, do you need me to re-ask the question?
Yeah, that'd be
Okay, great. Hi, Tara.
Hi.
I'm Leah Lem. So I was just talking with Heather Keeler here about her experience on seeing what she was seeing on the ground. And I'm just wondering how those of us who aren't on site can support the work of the water warriors and the water protectors, either by directly supporting you or by taking action. For those of us who can't be on site, how would you recommend that?
I mean, I would say first and foremost, like the need to be on site is like huge. And, I know that there are always other things going on in our lives, and that's like a reality that we all face, whether it's like our families or those needs that we're engaging in and those different paths we're all following. That said, there is an immense need from our mother to do something for her, that's very direct and is very pressing. I just got done scouting, as we've been scouting for the last 3 years, as part of GNU Collective. It's the direct actions encampment that's been out there since 2018. I mean, they are eating through the forest right now, and the amount of damage that's been done in just a couple of weeks is incredible. It's really hard to see. These are places that are beautiful forest, and they're not along the existing route. These are places that are so-called green zone. And that's happening, and it's happening every single day that these guys continue on with their work. So the call is now, to stand with the earth and to stand with our mother. There are ways to support when, if you can't be there. I'm not saying that every single person can. I would really recommend visiting. I can put a link. It's Linktree/Stopline3. It's got all of the grassroots organizations that have been engaging in various portions of the blockading protection of land and protection of people. So there are the Gitchigumi Scouts that are doing missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives work. There are GNU Collective, that's us. There is Northfielders Against Line 3. There's a bunch of really cool allies that have been helping us out for a long time. There is the Line 3 Legal Defense Fund for the folks who are being arrested and are taking those risks to get bailed out of jail. There's Honor the Earth, which has been doing a lot of the heavy lifting in the legal systems. I know those are like some of the Native organizations that are on the ground and have been for quite some time in this long time fight. But yeah, I mean, amplifying the message and telling the governor for the 18,000th time that this is really messed up is something. I think there's definitely a need to start pressuring and to continue to pressure the Biden administration, the incoming Biden administration, about the 404 water permits and the need to review those much more closely. This is over 200 water bodies and 800 wetlands that are impacted by Line 3. Not just by spills. This is not just a situation about spills. This is a disruption to the water quality and to the, yeah, I mean, you can't not feel the way that I think a lot of us do when you see a wetland that is being literally ripped apart by these heavy machines in a matter of days. It is appalling and really hurtful.
Thank you for sharing that. Just one more question here before I bow out of this conversation. But if we do want to, if folks out there do want to help, I know some of us are more shy than others, but how can we take that first step to get there? I know when talking with Heather, it sounds like there are quite a few camps up here in northern Minnesota. What would you recommend as far as getting in touch with a camp and being able to take and participate and be as helpful as possible?
Yeah, I mean, I'm only aware of 2 current camps that are like in active, that are actively being run right now. I know there's an effort to build a couple more. But as I know, like the direct ways to get involved is There is Winona's public kind of like welcome to everybody, welcome water protectors camp that's over in just north of Palisade on the Great River Road. You can drive up the Great River Road north of Palisade and you'll run right into it. I mean, you'll see the police for one, and you'll see the machines that are there. It's, you can't miss it when you're way out in the woods and you're out in that area of the state, of the territory. There's also, like, you know, plates from Texas, Utah, Illinois, South Dakota, North Dakota, everywhere you look, and that's not something that is a norm up here for sure. If you want to get involved with a direct actions piece into it, you can email us at gnu@protonmail.com, and you know, there are always ongoing needs there too. Some folks have been helping us out lately with wood, and that's been desperately needed. And with food, that's always a need, and those basic infrastructure needs. But in addition to that, the actual willing to take a risk. So, you know, I would say, like, since this is, you gotta bow out of this, like, I oftentimes encourage folks that are shy, that are feeling like, how do I take that first step? You know, we're talking about climate crisis at the scale of eradicating all life as we know it, and of watching and being part of knowing what kind of world we're handing off to those littles that are out there right now. You know, it's been raining this last week. That should scare the hell out of every person that is from this place. And that's not just a one-off, that's not an anomaly. That is something that's happening all over the globe at a massive scale. The beetles are eating the trees, the trees are burning, and that's really frightening. And the global south is, I mean, they're losing hundreds and hundreds of yards of homeland underwater every single day. If it's that scale of crisis, like I really hope that folks respond to the crisis with you know, more than what we have of just you know, the standard policy and legal systems that because they are not interested, and they are directly invested in these systems that are destroying us. So yeah, there's nothing more powerful than seeing someone standing with prayers and love in their hearts for our earth. So yeah, the George Floyd uprising should tell all of us what direct action can accomplish in the span of just a few weeks. So that was a moment for all of us to see.
Got it. Thank you, Tara. Or yes, thank you, Tara, very much for chatting, and thank you, Robert Pilot, for having me on. I'm going to say goodbyes, or say Gigawabamin for now, and I'll let you keep going with the program.
Peeny Gigi, thank you so much for stopping in, and really thank you for all you do. We'll be talking to you soon, Peeny Gigi. I want to switch gears I want to switch gears just a little bit right now, and I want Tara and Heather just to relax a little bit. And what I want to do is just switch gears just a little bit, and I want to reach out to this Antonio Gonzalez, who's like a premier. I'm glad that you've been able to hear what's going on here in the deep north, but you also have things happening, and I'd like you to share. First, introduce yourself and share what's going on with you. And if you have a question for House Representative Heather Keeler or Tara Hauska, that would be great too. But if not, let's let you take the floor. And I'm so happy to have you on again.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Antonia Gonzalez, and I am Navajo. I'm the anchor and producer for National Native News, and I'm also a correspondent for New Mexico in Focus, which is a primetime show here in New Mexico on New Mexico PBS. And coming January, I'm also going to be a correspondent for Native Report. So watch out for some of my stories that are going to appear on Native Report. So thank you so much for allowing me some time to speak tonight. Yes, we've been following the pipeline issue and other pipelines across the country even some issues in Canada. We've been following the Biden-Harris transition, including looking at tribal leaders and Native groups calling for New Mexico Congresswoman Deb Haaland to be put in as Secretary of the Interior. That's one of the big stories we've been following. And also, of course, continuing our coverage on COVID-19 across the country and how it's impacting tribes across the country, and especially here in the Southwest, where I'm based out of. And some of the news we've been following is the Indian Health Service preparing to distribute the vaccines, and two of the largest tribes in the United States, the Cherokee Nation and the Navajo Nation, have been preparing for their distribution plans, and that's supposed to happen this coming week. So those are just some of the stories that we're following. And I'd also like to introduce my colleague Sunny, who has been doing some great work on the Navajo Nation. Her stories have been featured across the country and mainstream. All my work is in Native media, but Sunny, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Sunny Clutches Chiligi. I am also Navajo. I'm from a really tiny town by the name of Tisnos Ponce, Arizona, near the Four Corners Monument. As Antonia mentioned, a lot of my coverage has been national, but also worldwide. I am the contributing writer for Searchlight New Mexico, which is an investigative journalism website. And we partner with a lot of mainstream media, including The Guardian, Rolling Stone magazine, and my work's also been published in the New York Times and a number of other local Southwest media. And my primary coverage is of COVID-19 impacting the Navajo Nation, specifically because we are working on a year-long series which focuses on how COVID is changing different communities within New Mexico. And my focus is primarily on the Navajo Nation, primarily Shiprock, New Mexico, which is in northern Navajo. So I've been working on this year-long project. I just came out with my third installment in our series, which focuses on how COVID is impacting Navajo women specifically and how dangerous that can be for the culture. So a lot of my work focuses more on the cultural end of things, putting it more under the microscope than what mainstream media is able to do. So thank you for having me.
And Sunny, maybe you can talk a little bit more and expand on how COVID-19 has really impacted the Navajo Nation. It is such a large tribe, one of the largest in the country in the Four Corners region, covering 3 states. What are some of the issues that you're hearing currently from community members? In the beginning, there was lack of PPE. There's also a lot of issues with, the tribe doing emergency orders, closing the reservation, lockdowns, and now with the tribal officials and health officials rolling out the vaccine. What are you hearing from community members in the areas you're covering?
It seems like, you would think that we're, 8-9 months in now since COVID reached the Navajo Nation. And you would think that there would be some kind of changes in the sense of, our being able to adapt to this, to what's happening. But what really, it's just, there's a consistent newness to everything that's happening. And so, once we kind of get comfortable and feel like that, once the people and everyone here gets comfortable and feeling like, okay, I think we have something under control, we're kind of, hit in the side of the head again and reminded that no, it's not going anywhere just yet. And so a lot of the things that has been said in terms of mainstream media about the disparities kind of being unearthed and the lack of this and the lack of that, all of those things are still there. And I think what the conversation is now for a lot of the people is what happens when the vaccine comes and COVID goes. It's what will happen to us then, because we've lived without water for so long. Some people have lived without housing, without shelter, without all of these things that, while they're getting a lot of that support now, but it's a lot of the question is, well, what happens next? And so I think that's kind of what's weighing on a lot of people's minds. In terms of the vaccine, the conversation is just as divided as is, I think, nationally. There's a lot of hesitation. There's a lot of wonder about exactly how that affects us as Indigenous people, because there's a lot of curiosity about how these trials that have happened on the world and national level, how much of us are considered in that, and what our makeup is as Native people, and how we'll be impacted by the vaccine. So there's a lot of questions in that sense, and it's not being localized, of course. There are some Native media outlets in the area and local media who, they're kind of not really diving into it, but they're starting to talk about it, since the vaccine is supposed to come to the Navajo Nation starting tomorrow, just like it is nationally. So that's kind of what the conversation is now, I think. I mean, it really hasn't ended from what we started talking about. It's just a continuation.
And just wanted to see what your take was on, since your stories are in mainstream media nationally and internationally, what kind of response have you seen? And do you think that people who are not used to maybe reading about tribes, do you think that this is part of the educational part? What are some of the responses that you're seeing from, outside, from non-Native and around the world?
Honestly, a lot of the response that I have gotten, and it really depends on where they've read the story. If people have read the story, say in The Guardian, a lot of people are just wowed by the fact that, unfortunately, by the fact that we're still here. I mean, the topic of this conversation and this program is the fact that we're still here, and a lot of people don't know that. And so that's a lot of the response that I get, is that I didn't know that that was happening. There's a lot of, I don't know that people were there, people were living that way, people don't have water. So there's definitely a lot of education happening. And I think some of the other response, amazingly enough, is people are just so willing to contribute. I had to do something very, very non-conventional with one of my stories. My second story was about looking at a specific community where Navajo elders are very independent. And in that community, a lot of them are not getting the support. They're not getting food. They're not getting water. They don't live in great houses. And so that story prompted or generated so much response worldwide that I ended up having to create a donation fund that raised nearly $10,000. And that's not something that a journalist does, say, in mainstream media, because of ethics issues. But I've always been an advocate for, when you cover things in Indian country, it's not the same as covering it nationally. You have to consider the responsibility one has, like for myself, to their community. There was no way I was going to let elders just go hungry after the response that I got for people wanting to donate. And so there's a lot of educating happening. And I think that that's one of the things that I'm most excited about with my platform. However, it can be challenging at the same time, because there's a lot of pushback that I get from maybe editors who are not Indigenous and who don't understand some of the things that I mentioned in my story, especially culturally relevant things. And so yeah, I think the biggest thing is education. Their eyes are definitely opening.
I'll hand it back to you, Robert. Thanks, Sunny.
Thank you.
Okay. I know Heather has to take off here. She's had a really long day, and I saw her at Winona's camp. But I just want to say, Heather Pinigigi, for coming on and speaking your truth. And we stand behind you 100%. And it's so great to have someone like you representing our Native people, the state of Minnesota, and your community.
Yeah, Pilame, Robert, for having me on. Just one thing I would add, as far as what people can do, and I people used to say this all the time, and I would kind of like blow it off because I didn't think it really worked. But like, reach out to your legislators, like make sure that people know how important this is, and make sure that people know like that this is moving really, really fast. Tara talked about it within days, weeks. I mean, things are just changing so dramatically and so quick. And, I think that's really intentional that they're trying to get through this before we have a day in court. And I think that we need to hold the pressure to our leaders. We need to hold our governor accountable. You can't just run a campaign on, saying you're going to care about sovereign nations and you're going to care about moving Minnesota to be a fossil fuel free state in 2030, yet then we're like building a pipeline. That's really contradicting to me. And so I think we need people across the state to really reach out to their legislators that then, and all just put pressure on our leadership right now, and as a newly elected official, I hope that my community would do that for me too, because that is another angle that we need to take. We need to slow this process down. And wait. The other thing is that we need to make sure that we're in partnership with our tribes and our sovereign nations, and making sure that when they say that there's a, Mary, what the historical, cultural Enbridge is supposed to have this cultural person or individual that needs to come out and evaluate situations, and it's like not really a person. Nobody really knows who that is, and why wouldn't they be partnering with people like Winona, who very much is is connected to the culture. That to me is just a huge disconnect. So speak up. If you can't go out there, find ways to get things out to these camps. I know Tara mentioned it, and I think we put the link in, but there's just amazing people out there. Today, when I was out there, it's a very spiritual space. Like I can't explain it. I still am like trying to wrap my mind around the feeling out there. But from my area, we can take wood out, we can take things out, just try to get involved and try to be a community right now through all of this. And when I say a community, I mean like the entire state of Minnesota and this entire nation and Turtle Island. Like it's so much more than just what's happening at the camps, that the rest of us really need to get involved. And it's not always comfortable. It's not always convenient. The weather wasn't great today. It was a long day. I had to take time away from my kids, but this work is so much bigger than us. And we have to really invest in that. So thank you, Tara, for the work that you do and the work that you've been doing, and to everybody else who's really invested in creating this change. I'm just so appreciative, and I was really humbled and honored to be able to spend the day out there today. So Pilame.
It was really nice meeting you in person for once instead of on Zoom, and you do our people proud. Peeny Gigi, thank you so much, Heather, for being on tonight. Really, really, thank you so much.
It'd be good to meet you at some point. Be much for all your work, for real. Hopefully we cross paths soon.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a whole nother group. It's one thing Mary and I said that we really have to be intentional about inviting people out. I think that there has to be that space. And we're already working on another group trying to come out next Sunday, because I think the more that we bring people out, the more they just feel charged to do something. Also, I just want to say, this is total side note, but hearing and feeling the drum today, I didn't realize how much I missed that, without powwows and stuff in this pandemic, and just without being around our people and that energy. Like I was just so emotionally fueled, and there was kids at the drum, and I love that. And so, it's so much more going on out there. And so if you could share that message with everybody out there, how much that really meant to me, and it really positively and powerfully impacted the other legislators that came out today.
And just a quick plug, we have a show on Wednesday nights called Together with Heather. Heather, do you want to just give a quick plug before you go? We're just, I know you got to get going. I keep on asking you questions, but do you mind doing that?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm really excited. I have Together with Heather Wednesday nights from 7:30 to 8:30, hosted on Native Roots Radio. It's not a political show. I may be a newly elected official, but I wear so many more hats in this community. So it's just some of those conversations that we wish we could have, or that sometimes we feel so alone in some of these areas. And it's just nice to know that we can connect with other people. This show, so my very first show was with my family. And then my last show was talking to females who stepped up to run, and our campaign managers, and how important it is for females to support other females. We're not in competition with each other. We really like, if we work together, we can rise and be so powerful. But this Wednesday, it's really exciting because my birthday is on Friday. So I'm having like a birthday party on my show. But we're going to talk about long distance friendships, and how that's so important. My friend from Australia will be on, and my best friend from Arizona, and a couple other friends, just talking about, as adults, it's really hard to like make friends. And so you have to be really intentional in the middle of your lives to really connect with people, because those friendships are so powerful. It's like that therapy and that fun, but also your close friends challenge you and hold you accountable to grow. And so we'll just be talking a little bit about that. So Wednesday night, 7:30 to 8:30. We also do an education corner every show because I am really passionate about education and higher ed and making sure that we close the achievement gaps. And I think also that's just a space where talking about education always being a lifelong opportunity. So we always do 5 to 6 minutes of tips and tricks on education highlights. So join us on Wednesday. Is that it, Robert?
Yeah, that's it. And thank you, Peeny Gigi. Oops. For the mug. Peeny Gigi for the mug.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. I was wondering if our friends from Antonio or Sunny, if you have any questions for Tara or Mary Kunish before you guys take off. I wonder if Antonio, you have any questions for Tara Hauska?
So we definitely follow missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And I know that this is a big issue tied to a lot of the pipeline construction. I saw last week that various grassroots groups were calling on the next administration to not only stop pipelines, but to address this issue as top concerns. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's I'm seeing it firsthand, which I guess I hoped I never would have to, in terms of it being here in our backyards. When these pipeline projects are constructed, or any major really massive infrastructure project, it means what I had mentioned earlier, which is, you got thousands of out-of-state workers flowing into an area, typically a rural area, typically near reservations, and that's what's happening up here. So all these workers from out of state are here to construct this pipeline through our homelands. They do that for a couple of reasons. I think it's a lot easier to just destroy land that you have no connection to. It's a lot easier to view people who are not your neighbors as opposition, as protesters or whatever, when it's not like your actual community. But on top of that, that also means that there's got to be places for these people to be housed. It means that there are temporary housing structures in dozens of work yards across the state. It means that in this particular project, Enbridge promised to not build man camps, even though they've got these temporary housing structures, which I don't really understand the difference between the two. But that also has led to them renting Airbnbs, hotels, apartments, entire complexes all across the proposed route. They are in our communities. They are in our, in our places that we live, and they're on our dating sites. They're on our internet webs and our internet access, in terms of like solicitation and the amount of sex trafficking and all of that is statistically tied to these type of projects. We got the added risk of the pandemic currently with this. We're talking about Aiken County. There's 2 ICU beds in the entire county, and hundreds of folks from out of state are currently out there every day on these lines. And I think it's a slap in the face to public health to see Tim Walz ban Thanksgiving and holiday gatherings because of the concerns about being with our relatives from far away, but to allow the construction to proceed on this pipeline, requiring thousands of out-of-state folks to come in. That has nothing to do with public health. And I'm still unclear on as to like their missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives plan, like what they got some cultural sensitivity training, they've got some information about it. What does that mean in terms of like who's actually in charge of compliance, who's in charge of oversight? Like, you know, how are we supposed to turn to the law enforcement agencies when we know that there's a public safety fund and they're being paid directly or at least receiving benefits directly from the company for any costs incurred on line 3 protesting, which in my mind is like a complete violation of the public trust. I don't even understand how that's lawful. But yeah, you've got police officers, sheriffs that are out guarding Enbridge sites all over the state. Like that is happening. You've got them in riot gear in places like Aiken County and Park Rapids, like MRAPs showing up in like these tiny little county courthouses. And this reality of knowing that these communities are rural, we are isolated, and we are the ones that have to bear the brunt of the human costs in addition to the environmental costs of these projects. So MMIW is a very, very real concern.
I'm wondering too, if Sunny, if you have a question for Tara before you go, and then we're going to bring Kevin back on because he had to go to a birthday party and really get Kevin involved with this. Sunny, do you have any questions for Tara or even Mary Kunish, state representative? She was at Winona's camp today.
Oh, I don't. I'm sorry.
So if I could just sort of maybe work off of what Tara was talking about. I'm a state legislator here in Minnesota. My family is Standing Rock, Lakota. And I was able to pass and create a task force to study the missing and murdered Indigenous women here in Minnesota. We passed it within a year of introducing it with 100% bipartisan support. And we had a year to do it. We had a year to do our task force and very little money. But I have to say that the team that was put together was absolutely incredible. And we had hoped, it's actually, the report is due to the legislature this month. I think we had originally planned to share it last week, the first week of December, and then we were all set to do it again this coming week, and it got furloughed once again. And I'm a little bit convinced that it has to do with this issue around Enbridge, and that it will bring to the top again the news or the information around the historic trauma and violence that is the result of this extraction industry. And so I, for one, am extremely disappointed and was pretty upset the other day when I heard the news that this really great day of information and celebration was canceled once again. But it is really an important issue here in Minnesota. It's a strong, strong concern by not just our Native communities, but other agencies and programs that work with violence and addiction issues. And before this last campaign or this last election, when folks are interviewing candidates and for election, this came up, and I was asked all about it, and one of the union groups really wanted me to provide actual data and tell them where this is happening, and probably give them beautiful graphs and all kinds of historical information. And that's the problem, is that we don't have that information. Nobody has ever kept track of it, but everybody in community knows somebody or has family members or loved ones or numerous stories to tell about how one of our women or two-spirit or even men and boys go missing when there are hundreds and thousands of out-of-state workers coming in to work on this kind of issue. And so we will try to keep a close watch on it. And I'm always looking to, when somebody says, you know, they're on our dating sites, they're this, they're that. You know, I want to make that known, and I want to share that information and make sure that Enbridge is doing as they please. Again, we don't know who those people are that we can report that to, and of course, there's probably a conflict of concern with our local jurisdiction, but you know, rest assured that there are a lot of people watching out and making sure that this isn't going to happen again to our Native folks. That's all I got.
Awesome. Hey, I want to respect Kevin's time here. Kevin, do you have any questions for Mary or Tara? We'll bring Tara back on. And welcome back, Kevin. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, sorry to have to step away there for a moment. It's my daughter's 10th birthday tonight, so we just had some cake and ice cream, and she blew out some candles, and so it was nice. So, but yeah, just a couple questions. You know, obviously now that this decision has been made to grant this construction stormwater permit for Line 3, what sort of legal options are there for stopping this project, and what sort of work, I guess, is being done, if it is, I guess, to try to still stop this project?
I'm guessing that's for me. I mean, there are actually a number of different lawsuits on different aspects of this pipeline project going on right now. One of the big asks is for a injunction or a temporary stay of construction to allow those legal issues to be considered before the pipeline is built. So what happened in Standing Rock when it comes to the Dakota Access Pipeline and the fact that they illegally constructed this pipeline, but it was already in the ground, like that's a common tactic of industries like this. They will try to get everything done as quickly as humanly possible while these legal issues are still being considered, because the courts take, you know, a long time. Like that's just the reality of our legal systems, is they are not expedient. They are, you know, oftentimes have a large docket, and these are very, you know, complicated issues that need to be considered. You know, one of the lawsuits is Minnesota's own Department of Commerce is suing the Public Utility Commission because it cannot prove the need. The application for Enbridge's Line 3 did not prove the need through the oil forecast for this pipeline. You know, White Earth Nation, Red Lake Nation, Honor the Earth, the Youth Climate Interveners, you know, Friends of the Headwater is involved in different aspects of the various lawsuits. There are so many different lawsuits ongoing, and so the big hope is that we can get a injunction issued for this, so those legal matters can actually be considered before it's rendered moot by the line being built. You know, I would say one of their aspects when I was listening to Representative Kunesh Padin, I mean, I just want to emphasize the concern that I have about our ability to gain protection and justice through our law enforcement that's directly tied to this industry. So it was quite a few calls ago that I was on here. It was over, like, it was still when it was, you know, sunny and warm, right around the time that we were looking at, you know, Donald Trump's potential re-election. And there were all those Trump trucks everywhere in northern Minnesota that I'm sure any of us who have been in northern Minnesota are very familiar with. We had 3 bike-presenting gentlemen coming through the woods onto our private property that's pretty remotely located, carrying an American flag. And who knows what their plan was and what they had intended to do. And we chased them off, and the next day the county sheriff showed up on our property for the first time, and then proceeded to run the plates that were in the encampment and come back and arrest someone. So, like, I'd say just like on a like, just this is what I've seen and experienced. I don't know that law enforcement is always on the right side and is always accountable to the people that pay for their salaries, day in and day out when Enbridge isn't here. How are you supposed to turn to those folks when something goes terribly awry, when they are directly engaged with the protection of Enbridge's interests? Yeah, I don't think that can be emphasized enough in terms of how it feels to be on the ground, to be out in the rural areas and out on a dirt road somewhere and looking at riot cops. I mean, yeah, there are legal cases. There is also the reality of like what direct action takes and what it means, which is causing delays to construction and protecting these places that we have left, and causing immense public pressure and immense need on behalf of the earth to make a decision in the courts, make a decision at the government level, at the governor's level, at the federal level, whatever it takes. I mean, all of these different angles work in tandem. No one angle is the silver bullet ever when it comes to fighting a multinational corporation that's building the largest project in its company's history, which is what Line 3 is. It's the largest project in Enbridge's history.
Has Joe Biden given any indication about what he thinks about this project, and what role could he play potentially in stopping Line 3?
Yeah, a couple of us are actually going to be on a call with the Biden transition team this week, and there are a lot of different levers being pulled behind the scenes from various folks that, a lot of my work before I came back home was actually national work, and that's still the case. Beyond just this actual local all-out war that's happening on the ground to protect the earth. There is a very easy thing that Joe Biden could do, and it's the same for Keystone XL. It's the same for the DAPL expansion. I mean, each one of these projects has various various stopping points that could be enacted as soon as he takes office. One of them with Line 3, with regard to Line 3, is immediately pulling the 404 water crossing permits to examine those permits. There is a lot of different aspects of that. I mean, how do you mitigate crossing 818 wetlands? How do you mitigate crossing over 200 water bodies? We don't even have an oil forecast that proves that you need to do these things. On I guess just a general note about like where we're at in terms of energy policy, it still is confusing to me how we start at the premise of need. That the old line 3 is leaking, so we need this new one. Well, maybe we should decommission the old Line 3 and not build anything at all. Like, that is an option. It's never one that seems to be considered. It's always, well, this company needs to do the best thing for the company. Like, obviously, that makes total sense. You got to replace the leaking one. No, clean up your old mess and transition to renewable energy and to sustainable energy consumption. We are grossly out of balance with energy consumption in this society, and also the expanded global society, which is where most of this oil is meant for.
Say, can I just jump in 1 second here? I want to really thank Antonio and Sunny for stopping in and bringing their truth to us. And then also listening to what's happening up here in the deep north in Minnesota. I really appreciate you guys and what you do. And I really love the fact that you were able to come on tonight. So Peeny Gigi, thank you so much. And we're going to get more into line 3 here.
All right. Thank you so much. Nice to see everybody. Robert, always a pleasure. And thank you, Sunny, as well. Good night, everyone.
Peeny Gigi, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I'd like to get, Kevin, do you have any more questions for Mary or Tara, or for Tara, and before I hand it over to Cole?
Maybe just one last question, which is, what can you do to try to get non-native people to care more about this? I realize you probably do have a lot of non-native allies that are part of this, but the larger population to care about this issue, so that they might start talking to their legislators, talking to people who have the power to stop this. What can you do, I guess, to try to inspire them to get more involved and work to stop Line 3?
I mean, the reality is that every single human being on Earth drinks water, and every single human being on Earth cannot live without clean water. There are, what is it? I heard someone throw out 93 million people downstream in the Mississippi River. It's one of the biggest, giant rivers in Turtle Island. This is I mean, just specifically for Minnesotans, I know that Minnesotans care about their lakes, they care about their cabins, they care about getting out there and hunting and fishing and hiking and kayaking and swimming and doing all these beautiful things that Minnesota is known for. This is a beautiful place. It's a beautiful, powerful place that's known for, those loons on the lake, right? Like that's what we think of when we think of Minnesota. And whether you are a Native person or not, like we have an obligation to hand something to the next generation that is viable, that is a place that has not been destroyed, because of greed or because of never-ending expansion and consumption. I think that is something that's not really that hard to grasp. Even when I talk to like pipeliners, I think that there's a lot of people who don't want to build pipelines, who don't want to build oil pipelines. They don't want to build and dig out and extract metals from the earth. They're not interested in destroying their natural environment, but there's just not the investment there in some of these rural places, including rural northern Minnesota, to build other things, to put us to work in other ways. I mean, non-Native people, like it's all of our futures on the line. It's all of our vested interests. We are all human and we all need water to drink. And it's not just this one pipeline. It's climate change. It's climate crisis. It's Line 3 could cripple the tar sands, and that most extreme form of extraction in the world. That's where they're at. They're on the edge and on the brink. So like, if ever there was a time to be involved in the climate fight to have a future, this is a great way to get involved.
Thank you.
Kevin, I'm wondering if you mind telling everybody what news organization you're with before I move to Cole.
Sure.
And then Melissa.
Yeah, I'm with Indians.com, a Native American news website owned and operated by the Winnebago Tribe of Nebraska.
My relatives. Awesome. So Cole, welcome. And could you tell us a little bit about you and maybe a couple questions, bring up a couple questions to Tara or Mary Kunish?
Sounds good. Yeah. Bonjour, everybody. My name is Cole Primo. I'm a Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe member. My father's side, the indigenous side of my family, hails from Ajamug near St. Croix River, east of Hinckley. I live in Minneapolis currently, not too far from Bede-Makaska. I worked at WCCO TV as a web producer for the last 10 years. And a few years ago, I joined on to the Minnesota Native News team, and I currently work on Native Lights, Where Indigenous Voices Shine, radio show and podcast. So, I mean, long story short, I'm just glad to be here and amongst everybody. I'm glad to be among Native folk fighting for what they believe in. And yeah, I've been also working with some freelance writing, I did a story on the Native American Community Clinic in Minneapolis and its integration of spiritual care and virtual care for the U.S. News and World Report. That was a very daunting task. We got that handled. That was fun to do. I talked to many people at the clinic, and it was great to get more connections going. Anyways, that's my little spiel for my introduction. But anyways, on line 3, I do have some questions, and either Tara or Mary could take this. Just very simply, what can journalists in the news media do to better tell the story? What stories are not being told? And is there a preferred method of engaging with activists, like respecting their space?
I mean, I would definitely say like I'm hopeful and confident that just like many of these resistances, like Dakota Access Pipeline, like the Trans Mountain Pipeline, like the Coastal GasLink Pipeline, um, so many pipelines, right? Where land defenders are fighting these extractive industries all over the world. It's not just here in North America, it is literally everywhere. I'm hopeful and confident that there can be a voice that is centered in the indigenous people of the territory, because that narrative is incredibly important to understand that these pipelines are an extension of colonial practices. They're an extension of genocide. They're an extension of dispossession and disenfranchisement of Black and Brown people, in this case, Indigenous people that are living in these territories. And I can guarantee you, like these refineries, I've been to some of them. They're in Black and Brown communities in these urban places. It's all connected, right? Like that's why we talk about environmental justice. Environmental justice is climate justice. I'm hopeful that the reporters understand that and that they continue to reach out to the Native organizations that are involved in this and Native people that are involved in this, not just the orgs, like they find the community members that are out there, and listen and uplift those voices. Our allies, when they stand with us, our accomplices, when they stand with us, they're taking these risks, but they're also trying to do a service of uplifting these voices that need to be heard. Broadly in the climate movement, also just generally, the woman that was on earlier talking about invisibility and the fact that most people don't even know who we are. I mean, like that's case in point right there. Like these fights have become also moments for people to become aware of the fact that we are still here and that we are still being screwed over in lots of different ways. Yeah, so whatever journalists can do to help with that, and hopefully a lot of Native journalists get good coverage too. You know what I mean? Like in terms of like they're the ones telling the story, that it's not just non-Native journalists carrying these stories. Like y'all need to be, you're from our communities, you know what I mean? Like you know how to tell the story better than anybody else.
Awesome. Say, Cole, I'm going to come back to you, but I want to go to Melissa because Melissa, we co-host a show during election night, and my wife said Melissa asks such great questions, so I can't wait to hear what Melissa has to say. Melissa, come on in and ask Tara or House Representative Mary Kunesh question, please.
Yeah, I have so many questions, and I don't want to get into the weeds too much on single issues, but there are a couple things I'm really curious about. The first is this issue that I've heard about that is specific to the lodge that Winona LaDuke and Honor the Earth has built there near Palisade. Can you talk a little bit about why this location and what this particular strategy is about? I've been seeing some of this in live feed, and I'm just looking for some more detail. What is the hope, and again, why this lodge at this specific place?
Mary, do you think you could answer that? You were out there twice with me.
Yeah, I'm happy to try to answer that. Maybe we need to get that right from Winona and the women. But Winona and the women up there built a lodge or a wigwam. It's not covered. And I think one of the loveliest things that was said today is that there is no covering on it right now because you can look up and see the creator, see the skies and the trees. And it was just such a beautiful day with the snow coming down. But before they started on the destruction, the line there, Winona and the women went out and they created this wigwam. It's right on the banks of the river there. And a week ago, the first time I went up there, Winona walked us down there to show it to us, and lo and behold, it's right in the pathway of their route into the river, to cross the river there. And I had been told that anytime there is any kind of a cultural finding or archaeological finding, that Enbridge was to immediately cease and stop and bring in the cultural monitor or somebody like that. And so that did indeed happen. I don't think anybody has met this cultural person and knows even who it is or who's responsible. And I think that's one of the issues, is that there's supposed to be all these people in line to be accountable and to monitor the situation, but nobody seems to know who they are or who to call for that. And so this lodge, again, we went down to the lodge, we walked down to the river, and there was a beautiful gathering around it. The women went into the lodge. There was singing and drumming and an offering. And I think it's sort of come to represent and mark the spot of almost like no return for the pipeline. Enbridge came and stuck one of their poles right in the middle of it, which is, you know, a little bit disrespectful and perhaps even sacrilegious. And that pole sits there right in the middle with its blue tag on it right now. And so I think that was extremely symbolic of, you know, and sort of telling the story of, you're in our way, but we don't care. We're just going to move right through and destroy whatever we need to destroy so that there's an end to our means. And that was, of course, very heartbreaking.
Thank you for that. I can understand how difficult that must have been. I have a little bit more of a follow-up question on another piece that I heard, which I'm very curious about. And I think you spoke a little bit to this issue, and I want to make sure I'm sort of correct in following this up. You spoke a little bit about a local union sort of interrogating or, you know, questioning, or in some ways trying to better understand the MMIW issue from the standpoint of labor. From what I don't know if this question can be answered, but are the workers who are coming from out of state, are unions in some ways advocating for this particular group of jobs with Enbridge, therefore sort of holding the governor's hands as far as his, you know, stated support for labor unions goes?
Is that to Tara?
That would be either to Tara and maybe some in both, maybe. But I'm curious about, there's sort of two pieces. One is about sort of this group of laborers that's come from out of state, from different places, I'm assuming, and then, you know, what impact does this particular group of migrant workers coming from out of state have on labor relations at our state government level?
Wow, that's a, you know, we've done a couple shows on that, and I think one of the things is that we don't have any pipe fitters in Minnesota. So these people are from all over the country, and I heard 98% of the workers that are coming in here and doing this pipeline stuff are from out of state. And so I think it was a misnomer to say that these were going to be jobs for us, you know. I think that's the biggest lie that we've heard. That I was up to Fond du Lac, been up twice now to Winona's camp, and I have not seen any big trucks from workers with Minnesota license plates. None. So,
you know, in the Star Tribune today, there was an article about how great everybody is. Union labor says Enbridge project could not have come at a better time. And it's in the article, it says about 30% of the workforce will be operating engineer union members who run the graders, bulldozers, drills. Another 30% will be general laborers from the Labor International Union of North America. And half of those workers will be locally dispatched by the union, while the rest are company hands, union members who travel with the contractors. Minnesota provides by far the largest share of the workforce, but then it says another 30% of the Line 3 workforce are United Local 798 pipe fitters who will weld the pipeline together. Those workers are likely to come from out of state. So there seems to be a lot of contradiction. The union takes jobs around the country, although other unions may live in northern Minnesota and perform maintenance on end bridges or other pipelines. And then the final 10% of the union workforce is comprised of the Teamster drivers. You know, that was a big push. It was all jobs, jobs, jobs for northern Minnesota. And I understand the need for jobs up in northern Minnesota. But yesterday I had a call from somebody whose son is working on the pipeline. He's he's an inspector, but he does not get any benefits. He does not get any health insurance, and he was just recently diagnosed with cancer. And so this is one of those issues where they say all these great jobs and we'll be able to pay all the folks this great money, but then they actually, you know, don't fully cover those employees. They're independent contractors. Therefore, you know, there's layers and layers of contractors until you finally get down to that one person. And this person, you know, this guy's sick. He needs medical attention. We've got COVID raging through our state, and they have no insurance. So who's going to end up taking care of that, or who's going to, you know, foot the bill but Minnesota? Can we bill that back to Enbridge? I don't know. How do you prove that? And so there's just so much, you know, we hear it in so many different ways, you know, in one ear, out the other ear, but anecdotally, it just doesn't feel like they really are using our Minnesota labor the way that they had pitched it.
I'm wondering, Melissa, if we could go to Cole and then you next.
Yeah, sure.
Cole, do you want to have a follow-up question? We also brought on Oglema too, and she's been up at the line, and she's a reporter too. So feel free to ask her, Tara, or Mary, anything, Cole. So you have the floor.
Sure. Yeah, I was just curious on the out-of-state workers. What are your thoughts on, you know, Governor Tim Walz's continued allowance of this during the pandemic, and how do we know that COVID precautions are actually being taken? There are certainly elders, you know, not too far from that area who are at higher risk. So I was curious about that.
Well, I wish he would reverse that and say no, until we have this under control, they aren't going to come into our state. And I was also told that they are to always 100% have masks on, and we have reports that many, you know, that there have been a lot of instances where they don't. And then Tara, I don't know.
I haven't seen one with one on. I've seen a couple of police, but that's about it.
Yeah. You know, or they said, take pictures and report it. And I said, well, who do you report that to? And everybody's like, we don't know.
Yeah, that's the big problem, right, Tara?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, seriously, who's the enforcement mechanism? Who's the compliance mechanism? I'm not clear on that one.
So, Melissa, do you have another question? Because again, you had the best questions election night. I couldn't have done the show without you, so thanks for stopping in.
Thanks, Robert. I'm curious about the date of these next court dates. Some has been mentioned about seeking an injunction to halt the current construction. So what is the timeline known here for sort of next steps?
Off the top of my head, I believe those decisions are coming out. So there was an initial stay of construction that was requested, and the Department of Commerce, Keith Ellison, declined to weigh in on that. They could have just single-handedly issued a stay of construction. They did not do that. I believe the injunction filings are this week, the end of this week, but I'm not entirely sure, so you can't quote me on that. It's also getting quite late. I'm gonna bounce off this call pretty soon, guys. I've got like a lot. We did like a big call out, and there's a bunch of people coming up tomorrow morning, so I gotta like roll pretty quick here.
Tara, one more question. I know that there has been a sort of widespread call for people to come and join sort of the central camp that's there on the Great River Road. Tell us about that. Tell us about sort of the call to ask people to come and join what's happening right now before you leave.
I mean, I'm part of the call out for tomorrow morning. We're hoping that folks come and join us on the banks of the Mississippi River over at Palisade. You know, I know that there has been a general invitation extended to come and be part of or visit or, you know, support the public camp that's at Palisade or that's north of Palisade. There is also an invitation for folks who wish to engage in direct action, engage in you know, the scouting and the exposure of what's actually happening along the line through our collective, and that's just by emailing us. You can find that on our Facebook page. You know, there's COVID. I'm not sure of the COVID protocols at Palisade, but I know that we've got pretty strict ones. We've been able to successfully keep training hundreds of folks in direct action and treaty rights and decolonization and all of that by making sure that everyone's safe and masked up and socially distanced and eating outside and all those things. And I know the same is happening over at Palisade since I've also been to camp several times. But yeah, I mean, need the help, need the bodies, need the folks that are willing to stand, and the infrastructure to keep everybody safe and warm, including legal defense and bail money. That's always a need.
Well, Tara, thank you so much for spending time with us and letting us amplify what's going on. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you, and I'm wondering if we can just answer one more question before you go, and I'm going to have Cole ask you a question, and then we're going to let you go. And I really appreciate you being on. This is the last question for you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was just curious what's giving you strength out there as you're doing this.
You know, the Representative Keeler actually touched on it earlier. We've got a sweat that we keep at our encampment, and it's been really hard to not be around powwow and our people and all that, right? And to just be apart from each other, like that's been really hard. And I mean, I know every community wants to be connected, but I feel like there is power just in Indian people coming together. Like that's something that I heard from an elder forever ago, and it's always stuck with me that there's just power just in that, you know. So the coming together of people is definitely strengthening, and ceremony is always strengthening. Singing those songs of the banks of the Mississippi is really powerful. It feels like, you know, you feel that in your heart, and it's a little harder to sing in front of a machine that's destroying the earth in front of you. That actually is quite hurtful. For me personally, it's also, even if those things are hurtful, it is incredibly inspiring and beautiful and powerful to see people who are willing to risk themselves for something greater than themselves, that are feeling like not powerless, you know, because it's really easy to feel powerless in such a big oppressive system of influence, right, of the fossil fuel industry, but of many industries that are influencing our legislatures and our processes and our everyday lives. And to see people do that, and to feel like I stopped this today, you know, I reached the shareholders today, that is powerful and really inspiring, and something I'm honored to be part of.
Speaking of honor, I am honored to be in your presence. And Peony Gigis, thank you so much for being on, Tara. Really, you're a true inspiration, and I can't say anymore. Really, we got a free T-shirt for you next time I see you.
Those are badass t-shirts. Chimigwech to all of you and all of your work. And please keep writing, keep telling stories. Representative Kineshwari, thank you for coming. Like, that's like, I didn't get to say that to Representative Keeler, but like, it's pretty badass to see that the reps are actually showing up in these places and spaces. Like, that's like a testament to Minnesota and to the powerful people that are here and how we feel about our land and our beautiful lakes and rivers. So big wish to Robert continuously, and to my congratulations on getting to be a full time on this badass show. So big wish to all of you. Take good care.
Pina Gigi, thank you so much. Wow, Tara Hauska, that was just awesome. Let's do Melissa. What I'd like to do next in the last 10, 15 minutes we have here, because yes, it is really a 90-minute show. Sorry, is just maybe go a round table and maybe have a question for Oglema or Mary or myself, and then I'll go to Cole too, and we can just do a because I think this story really needs to be talked about, and with both your experience of what you guys do and professionally and radio wise, and so I just, Melissa, it's just great to have you on. Thank you so much. And what are your feelings here? What's your statement?
Thanks, Robert. Yeah, I'm curious as to where things go from here. I think this is a somewhat different moment in the wake of what happened at Standing Rock. And it sounds to me like the hope is that, the attention that was paid to the issues that concerned those bodies of water that were there, that are being impacted by that pipeline there in North Dakota would be, that same pressure would be brought to bear here in Minnesota. So it's really curious to me to see where things go. Things started small as well in North Dakota. I think, I don't have a sense, short of having gone myself, of what the feeling is there. In and around Palisade or some of the other sites. I was following some of Ogemaganukwe's sort of reporting or streaming live from the area around Palisade. I'm wondering, Ogema, if you think, I'm wondering what you think, but I'm wondering what you think in terms of sort of the support that is drawing towards this camp right now, and if it's growing, and if we're starting to see the sort of seeding of the same kind of movement that we saw around Standing Rock.
Well, certainly I think that that's the hope for the people who are really having their hearts in it right now. And I've said it before. So the point that I'm kind of at right now is I'm taking a journalistic standpoint to cover this issue, but I have been a water protector for many years now. So I participated in an encampment in northern Minnesota on Red Lake Nation ceded lands. I'm a Red Lake Nation member, and that was 7 years ago. So Enbridge had placed a pipeline under that land that belonged to the Red Lake Nation. It was ceded land to them, I believe sometime in the 50s, without asking permission to do that. So when this came about, a whole bunch of us ended up camping on that land and that line, attempting to get Enbridge to shut it down. And eventually, I think we held the camp for about a month, maybe a little bit longer, with probably less than 50 of us. There was somebody always on the camp for those whole 2 months with less than 50 of us. And what ended up happening is the Red Lake Nation Tribal Council decided that they would no longer support the movement and what was happening with us, which was a big disappointment at the time, but they've since kind of changed their stance, I think, after possibly learning a little bit more about what's happening with the issue. I'm not really sure. But as far as Minnesota goes versus Standing Rock, I think that there are some different things at play right now that maybe weren't at play at the time of Standing Rock. We have an entirely different president than we did at the time when Standing Rock was created. This is a president that has bred a lot of fear into people in the country, especially fear of those who are activists. And there's been a lot of laws and things like that that have been changed surrounding what your rights are as an activist in many states. And there's, I think, definitely a very real fear of standing up for what your rights are in Minnesota, especially northern Minnesota, which, from my understanding and my experience living in this area, tends to be a very conservative Republican area. So you don't really get respected to go and to do these things. But at the same time, the respect is going to come if you do go. We have platforms and people who are doing this work, and they're not doing this work to say we're only here to save our people. I don't remember off the top of my head exactly how many millions of people are downstream in the Mississippi River between where it starts in Itasca, Minnesota, and where it ends in the Gulf of Mexico. But I certainly believe that regardless of who those people are, the water protectors that are here in Minnesota are working for them and fighting for them as well. So I really hope that, it stops raining and we get more snow here. And by more snow, I mean I'm hoping to see this snowball effect and that this becomes more of a Standing Rock type movement. But it's important to acknowledge that the times are different than they were 4 years ago.
You raise an interesting point. And Mary, I want to key in on that a little bit with you. And that is, we have seen the move by this Minnesota state legislature to try and criminalize different kinds of protests, particularly around, following some of the protests that have occurred in the Twin Cities after the police shootings of young Black men here. We've seen these same kinds of movements as they regard pipelines criminalized in South Dakota. And, I haven't followed the bills in the Minnesota State Legislature as closely as I might have, but I'm wondering if you can speak to this issue about the continued attempt to criminalize certain kinds of protests by this Minnesota State Legislature, and what, if anything, you hope to be able to do now as a state senator.
Yes, we have had a number of bills that have come through the legislature that would like to criminalize or be much more punitive to not only those that are on the ground in a protest or speaking in protest of something, but also if there was a bill that would hold you almost to a felon level of legal issue if you trained any organizers or protests. So any of those sort of things have come through the state legislature. Fortunately, we've been able to, of course, fight those again in Minnesota. We have a majority in our state, in the House of Representatives, and for Democrats and progressive leaders, and a majority in the Senate, also a long day, of Republicans. And they bring these back again and again. They use them as an amendment to on almost any bill that they can possibly, and by they I mean Republicans, that they can add it to. And so it has been, we've been able to push back on it again and again and again. I'm sure we are not done with this yet. I find it interesting that there are, nationally, we have a rise in white supremacists who are protesting and creating damage, and they are not being held to the same level as folks of color who are much less destructive.
Yeah, wow. And I think what we're going to do here is we only got a few more minutes. And what I want to do is I want to go to Cole, and then I'm going to give everyone opportunity to say their piece before they leave and give a little pitch about their shows And I just really appreciate you being on, Cole, and Melissa, and all our guests tonight. It's been a huge deal. Poor Mary's been traveling like I am. I'm half awake right now because I got up we went up there and then we drove back, but it's really important to keep this going, and I really appreciate Melissa and Cole and Oglama and Mary for being on, along with all our other guests. But I'd like to have you, Cole, either end with a question and a statement, but also I'd like you to talk about your shows before you go too.
Yeah, I didn't have too much more as far as additional questions, but I, just wanted to say that I'm glad to be here, listening and learning. That's mostly what I wanted to do, because I haven't admittedly done a lot of coverage on Line 3 lately. Of course, COVID coverage has been a big deal, so it's good to hear these issues and hear from the people that are actually there. But yes, I'm currently working on this podcast and radio show called Native Lights, where Indigenous voices shine, and we are looking to find more people to talk to and hear about their gifts. And we were lucky enough to have Robert on our show earlier, and that was a great conversation. Yeah, so you can find that wherever you get your podcasts. It also plays on many community radio stations across the state via Ampers. And you can also go to minnesotanativenews.org for more podcasts and newscasts. That's my plug. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here.
That's an awesome plug. And, that's what I was hoping, is that we can have people like Mary and Oglama and Tara and Heather Keeler that have been in the front lines with their observations, and have you amplify their voices. So thank you so much for stopping in. I just want to say this one last thing before I go to Melissa, and that's we're going to end the show, but stay on just for a second afterwards. Don't leave right away. But Melissa, thank you so much. I really, really, really thank you so much for coming on and plug your shows.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Part of my, sorry if I was a little bit critical in just trying to butt in with a question. I thought we started a little bit earlier tonight, but I appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate the invitation to learn a little bit more about Line 3. This has been a long time coming, this battle. So now that and I feel like to some degree we always knew that we would be here, as people gather and literally put their bodies, in between, the land and, these lakes, and this heavy machinery. So, for those of you who have been out there today, and those of you who will be out in the future, thank you so much for all of your dedication. And that goes out to, our relatives all across the region, both native and non-native. Let's see, my show. I host Sanctuary on a sister station at KFAI. We are part of the Ampers Radio Network, which of course Minnesota Native News is also a part. And Sanctuary again is on Mondays at 1 p.m. So tomorrow, for example, the show will be a little bit about this issue as we replay an interview that KBXE did this past year with Winona LaDuke in the film that came out about Line 3, as well as a radio special by Native Voice One about people who are attempting to protect the Arctic wildlife, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge there in Alaska. So trying to do a little bit of coverage around this issue and some issues that are connected to it nationally, and try and follow some of these stories so that our local audiences here in Minneapolis have an opportunity to tune in and learn some more about that. In addition to Sanctuary, I'm the co-managing editor of our Miniculture audio storytelling program at KFAI, which is funded by our legacy dollars. And we do stories around Minnesota arts, culture, and history writ large. So really thankful to all the producers and all the radio makers and all the people who take the time to do this. This is not a get rich quick business, and it takes a lot of time, and it requires a lot of energy and a lot of learning and patience. So thanks to everybody who engages in that work, and thanks again for having me on.
Well, thank you so much, Melissa. I know you normally would have Mary go last, but I think she's fallen asleep right now because she's been, so I want to get to Mary really quick. And Mary, thank you. Mary, you've been on every show since the first week of March, and we got to get you another T-shirt. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on. And then you have the second to last word, and then we're going to Oglama and I will have a quick few things to say. We're going to end the show, but Gigi Mary, for all you do for MMIW, all our people, you're the people that voted you in, and also the state of Minnesota. So Gigi, thank you so much.
Thanks, Robert, and I always feel good after these shows. You really bolster me as well. The trips that we've taken up to Palisade have been really important. I think it was Susie was talking about how important it is to educate people around the issues. And I feel, for the last 4 years at the state legislature, I have done that time and time again, especially for our Indigenous, our Native communities, and the historic injustices that have happened again and again and again. And I think people are starting to listen and opening their minds and their hearts and their thoughts to really positive change as we go. You asked about a show. I don't really have a show, but every Saturday I get to do a 12-minute spiel on what's happening at the legislature or some kind of, what's happening politically across the nation. As it affects our Native communities. And I think it's just really great nationally how many not only elected officials we are finally getting, but journalists and media people that are that understand the Native plight themselves because they are of Native descent, or our allies that are starting to pay attention and ask the questions and are willing to kind of stick their nose out and tell the truth of the matter. So very pleased to be able to be a part of this, Robert, and just really thankful that you have this platform, throughout the week to share the good information. Totally in awe of all of you, and I'm honored to sit here with all of you tonight. Thanks.
Well, Mary's on Native Roots Radio, and when we go 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7, starting January 1st, and then we're going to be in Milwaukee, Chicago, and in Madison too. All the progressive stations in the 5-state area. Mary's going to be on with us too, and Oglama is going to be doing the news every day. And Mary's not going to be on every day, but Mary's going to be on and do her thing. And I want to say thank you for all that. Cole wrote something in the chat. I want Cole to just say this really quick because this is mind-blowing.
Yeah, I remember you saying that you're a baseball fan on our podcast episode recently, but breaking news, the Cleveland Indians are reportedly dropping their nickname, according to the New York Times. They might be phasing it out after the 2021 season. So that's
huge
pretty big
news. It's just so huge news. So Oglama, you've had a long day too. Give us a little snippet of what you're going to be doing, and also how excited you are to be a full-time Native Roots Radio Network personality.
Yes, miigwech, Robert. So starting at the end of this year and blending into the 1st of January 2021, I'll be full-time with Native Roots Radio. So that includes helping to produce the shows that you're seeing. So a lot of the promotion, the posters, the things that are done on the show are handled and made by me. And the all of those things that are kind of popping up on the screen, those are me as well. I also currently producing the show. Heather mentioned it earlier today, so on Wednesday nights we have Together with Heather from 7:30 to 8:30. So I'm the main producer for that show, helping Heather to promote and line up all the things for that show. What other stuff do I do, Robert? I do a lot of things.
You do it all, and then you buy me cups like this, and then I'm the one that has it on mute.
I did get him that cup. I thought it was just too fitting to not get it because we are all regularly on mute. This is the slogan for 2020. So I am really excited and proud to be part of Native Roots Radio and to be branching out with my journalistic skills and learning as much as I can along the way. That's going to be really important. And, I get to be a part of the journalistic side of something that's very important to me. And I think that is probably the best anybody could ask for. So, miigwech to Robert and everybody else who's helped me along the way. I know Mary's been super supportive as things have gone on. Heather has always been supportive as well. I think everybody that's come on the show that's heard the news has been excited for me. So I want you to know that doesn't fall on deaf ears. It's just still settling in for me. I'm just really excited.
You deserve all the good things that come to you, really. And so I want to end the show like we usually do. Everyone just hold on for a second, please. What I'm going to say this is we need to resist, divest, join a group, run for office. You've been listening to the Sunday Night Symposium produced by Native Roots Radio Network. Good night, everyone, and thank you, Pinigigi, for being on.